You know your own face better than you know almost anything else in the world. You could pick it out of a crowd of 1,000,000 people instantly. You know exactly how it looks when you are tired, when you are lying, when you are pretending to find something funny, and you have never once seen it. Not directly, not with your own eyes. Every human face you have ever genuinely looked at belongs to somebody else. Your own you have only ever met as a reflection or a picture, which is a copy made by a surface that you are choosing to trust. You have spent your entire life certain of what you look like, based entirely on second-hand evidence. Now that is a slightly strange thought, but it does not bother you, because you are surrounded by proof. There is a mirror in your bathroom. There is probably one in your hallway. There is a camera in your pocket that can show you your own face in under 2 seconds, and it has a mode specifically designed to do that. You are, without noticing it, the most self-visually informed human being who has ever existed. So here is the question. What about everybody before you? For hundreds of thousands of years, there were no mirrors. There were no photographs, no cameras, no screens. So how did ancient humans know what they looked like? And the honest answer, the one that takes a moment to properly land, is this. Most of them did not. Not really. Not the way you do. For the overwhelming majority of human history, the average person had only the vaguest idea of their own face, while knowing every face around them perfectly. Let me show you how we got from there to your bathroom. Start with the only mirror nature ever provided. Water, a still pool, a quiet river bend, a puddle after rain. That is the original mirror, and it is the one every animal on Earth has access to. So yes, ancient humans absolutely did look at themselves in water. But here is what people get wrong. They imagine this as a decent substitute, a sort of natural bathroom mirror. It is not. It is terrible, and it is terrible in 4 specific ways. First, water moves. The faintest breeze, a passing insect, your own breath, and your face fractures into ripples. Getting a genuinely still surface is rarer than you think. Second, water is dark. You are looking at a reflection sitting on top of mud, stone, or weeds, so the image is dim and low contrast, like looking at yourself in a switched-off television. Third, the angle is fixed. You can only view yourself from above, looking down at the one angle almost nobody else ever sees you from. You cannot see your profile. You cannot check the back of your head. You cannot see yourself as you appear to another person standing in front of you. And fourth, and most importantly, you have to go there. Water is not in your dwelling. It is out at the river or the pool, which means seeing your own face was not a private daily act. It was something that happened occasionally, in passing, while you were doing something else entirely, like drinking or fetching water. So the first thing to understand is that for most of human existence, seeing your own face was a rare, poor-quality, accidental event. Which brings us to the first real invention, and it is a beautiful one. Somebody worked out that you did not need water at all. You needed a surface smooth enough and dark enough to hold an image. In Anatolia, in modern-day Turkey, at a remarkable Neolithic settlement, archaeologists have found mirrors made of obsidian, dating back around 8,000 years. Obsidian is volcanic glass, formed when lava cools too fast to crystallize, and it is naturally jet black and glossy. Grind one face of it flat, polish it for hours with abrasive sand, and you get a dark, gleaming disc that throws back a genuine reflection. Think about what that took. Somebody had to notice that a broken piece of volcanic rock caught light in a particular way. Somebody had to decide that was worth pursuing. Then somebody had to spend an enormous amount of labor, entirely by hand, polishing a rock into a flat surface for no practical purpose at all, except being able to see a face. And these were not casual objects. Several were found placed in burials. Whatever a mirror meant to those people, it mattered enough to be sent with them into the ground. But an obsidian mirror is still dark. You are looking at yourself in a black surface, so it is like seeing your reflection in a switched-off phone screen. You get shape, outline, and a general impression. You do not get detail. You do not get color. So the next step was metal, and this is where mirrors become a symbol of power. In ancient Egypt, mirrors were made from polished copper and bronze, cast as flat discs with decorated handles. A well-polished bronze mirror gives a warm, golden, slightly soft reflection, dramatically better than water or obsidian. The Egyptians clearly found them significant, associating the round bright disc with the sun, and mirrors turn up in tombs and in religious contexts. In China, elaborate bronze mirrors were cast with intricate designs across the back and were prized possessions. But here is the crucial fact about every one of these. They were expensive. Metal was valuable, casting was skilled work, and polishing was slow. A bronze mirror was not a household item. It was closer to jewelry. It belonged to temples, to the wealthy, and to the powerful, which means that for thousands of years after the mirror was invented, the ability to see your own face clearly was a privilege of the rich. If you were an ordinary farmer, you might handle a real mirror a handful of times in your entire life, or never, and it stays that way for a very, very long time. Polished metal remains the standard for millennia. Every mirror is dim, slightly warped, and out of reach for most people. Then, in Venice, everything changes. Venetian glassmakers, working on the island of Murano, developed a method of backing flat glass with a reflective layer, using an amalgam of tin and mercury. The result was something genuinely new in human experience: a bright, sharp, accurate reflection. For the first time, a human being could look at a surface and see themselves properly, in color, in detail, with the light not swallowed by dark stone or dulled by metal. And Venice understood exactly what it had. The technique was treated as a state secret. Glassmakers were concentrated on Murano, their movements restricted, and taking the knowledge elsewhere was regarded as a betrayal of the Republic. For a long stretch of history, one small island effectively controlled the world's supply of clear self-knowledge. The prices tell you everything. A fine Venetian mirror could cost more than a painting by a serious artist. It was a luxury object on the level of a carriage. And when the French monarchy set out to break the monopoly, and eventually did, the flex was extraordinary. At Versailles, a single hall was built lined with hundreds of mirrors along its length, filling the room with reflected light and reflected people. It was not decoration. It was a statement about wealth on a scale that is difficult to overstate. That room, to a visitor of the time, was almost incomprehensibly expensive. So even into the 17th century, a clear image of your own face was something monarchs showed off. And then, less than 200 years ago, it ends. In the 1830s, a German chemist developed a process for depositing a thin, even layer of silver onto glass chemically. It was cheaper, safer, faster, and better than the mercury method. Mirrors could now be mass-produced. That is the moment. That is when the human relationship with our own faces changed permanently, and it is astonishingly recent. Your great-great-grandparents may have been among the first generations in human history for whom checking your own reflection was simply an ordinary daily thing. Now sit with what that means, because it is genuinely difficult to picture. For the overwhelming majority of the people who have ever lived, there was no reliable way to know your own face. You knew you had a nose, but not exactly its shape from the side. You knew roughly what color your eyes were because somebody told you. You did not watch yourself age. You did not know precisely how you looked when you smiled. You had never seen the back of your own head in your life. Meanwhile, you knew your mother's face in perfect detail, your children's faces, every face in your village. You could recognize a neighbor at a distance by their walk. Human beings have an enormous portion of the brain dedicated to reading faces, and it was working at full capacity all day on everybody except the one person you spent every waking second with. There is a story that only really makes sense in that world. The old Greek myth of the young man who leans over a pool, sees a beautiful face looking back, and falls hopelessly in love with it, never understanding that he is looking at himself. To us, that sounds absurd. How could you not know your own reflection? But in a world where reflections were rare, dim, and unreliable, a story about a person failing to recognize their own face was not a fantasy. It was a plausible mistake. Picture it properly. It is a bright morning. Several thousand years ago, you have walked down to the river to fill a jar. The water is unusually still today, and as you crouch at the edge, you catch it. Your own face, hanging in the dark surface, looking back up. It is not sharp. It ripples slightly with the current. But it is you, and you have not seen it in months. You notice something you had not registered before. A line by your mouth, a change around your eyes. Then a leaf drifts across it, and the image is gone. You fill the jar and walk back up the bank, and it may be a very long time before you see yourself again. That was normal. That was almost everybody, for almost all of it. And here is the part that makes this genuinely strange rather than just interesting. Because you might be thinking that at least you have solved the problem. You know exactly what you look like. Except you do not. Not quite. The face you see in the mirror is reversed. Your parting falls on the wrong side. The tiny asymmetries every human face has, the eye that sits slightly higher, the smile that pulls a fraction more to one side, are all flipped. And because you have looked at that flipped version tens of thousands of times, it is the version your brain has decided is correct, which is why photographs of yourself so often look subtly wrong. Nothing is wrong with the photograph. It is showing you the face that everybody else sees. The real one, the way you actually appear when you walk into a room. And it is not the face you know. So the face you are most familiar with, the one you have studied your entire life, the one you check before you leave the house, is a mirror image that no other person on earth has ever seen. And the face that everyone who loves you carries around in their memory is one you will never quite get used to. Ancient humans went their whole lives without ever clearly knowing what they looked like. We solved that completely in the last 200 years with a sheet of glass and a film of silver. And even now, after all that, the face you think is yours is the one nobody else can see.